So in this event, we'll be exploring the intersection between APIs and low code to see how this new paradigm is shifting expectations in the API economy. But before we begin, I'd like to set the stage a bit. For starters, there's no doubt that the pandemic increased digital reliance across the board. It really accelerated the need to craft new digital workflows and customer experiences within nearly every sector. Yet, a lot of organizations weren't really prepared for this new influx. They didn't have enough engineers to innovate quickly to reach new customer demands. So we saw a lot of expansion in the low code / no code platform and development area. Definitely saw a major uptick throughout the pandemic. And this trend utilizes visual programming models to help piece together applications and workflows using pre-built components. This helps professional developers generate applications pretty quickly. And also low code could bring in other roles into the development sphere as well. Some refer to this as citizen development. But with more abstraction layers placed on top of application development, how do we govern new low code capabilities? Also, where does this leave APIs? How can we bridge the pro code versus no code divide? Well, APIs are powering many integrations within low-code tools, for one, but it doesn't stop there, really. Experts argue that deep programmable control and flexibility is really what is needed to propel the low-code, no-code space forward, which I agree with. So today we're kind of gonna be ruminating on this theme. We've brought in experts to help investigate the relationship between APIs and low-code. First up, we have Asanka Abeysinghe, Chief Technology Evangelist at WSO2, and he's going to look at a platform approach to bridge the low code and pro code chasm. Then we have Dawie Botes, Head of Customer Success at 2057, who will also demonstrate how developer-focused low-code tools can help to rapidly construct microservices. I just want to remind real-time listeners that if you're watching live, feel free to submit your questions and we'll try to answer them all in the Q&A right after these two sessions. So with all that said, take it away whenever you are ready, Asanka.
Thanks, Will. Let me share my screen first.
Sounds great. Glad to have you on the call.
It's a pleasure to be here with both of you. Okay, hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from wherever you are joining for this session. So as Bill mentioned, I'm going to discuss about the low code and pro code chasm and how we can have a solution for this problem. So basically what I'm going to do during next 20 minutes is to discuss the this problem from the developer's point of view. So I'm coming from a strong product engineering and product architecture background. So I know the developer pain as well as a consultant. I'm working closely with many organizations working on API programs and various digital transformation initiatives. So I have seen the problems these organizations as well as specifically the development teams facing. So I am planning to share that those stories with you. So I'll start with this quote that I think the software industry is like the movie industry because there are a lot of parallels in both industries, like both industries trying to provide some experience for the users who's watching a movie or consuming a software products. And then what happening in this industry is taking an idea, moving into production, and then doing a release and getting the feedback from the users and keep on improving that. And both these efforts are great team efforts, that there are different roles, but all these both teams are working on a same mission and trying to accomplish something. So that's where I think these two industries have a really good synergy. So with that, if the software industry is like a movie industry, and if the code is the main driving force in software, code has to be creative too. So if you look at what the developers are doing, so they keep on building innovation by looking at the consumer demand and then how they can create a differentiator for the organization that they are building this software for. But that is not a fixed project with a fixed budget that we used to use in some time back. It's a moving goal because it's based on the mission and the vision of the organization, as well as different type of market dynamics and the what the consumers are really looking at. This goal can change, so developers are keep on working on that particular goal. So if the developers are creative and they are visual too. As a developer, I am visual because if you look at most of the time, we try to spend in front of a whiteboard and draw different type of diagrams that we draw flow charts, sequence diagrams, class diagrams, and flow diagrams, so on and so forth, and try to discuss this thing. I think if you talk to a developer during pandemic, this is the key missing part for most of the development groups, that we will not have that experience like we used to have it. But I think there are great digital whiteboards and visual communication platforms like this, so we can still get that experience. So what I want to highlight is developers are visual and they are discussing most of these different type of algorithms and various business problems using diagrams. If developers are visual, then why they don't draw code? So that is a question. And why the pro developers are not using low code platforms and trying to leverage those platforms in their development exercises. So this is a question. Why they are not doing that is mainly because of the problem that we are trying to discuss today. So these are the key problems that we experience. There are many problems, but if you prioritize them, these are the key problems that we see in the low-code platform. The first thing is mainly the low-code platforms are developed for citizen developers and ad hoc developers, and for some reason, they have ignored the pro code developers. In an organization, you will get all these three developer personas that you need to cater, and once you connect all these three personas only, you will get a great output. And it is one way. Why I claim it one way? Basically, if you edit the diagram, the code will change, but you can't edit the code because most of these low-code platforms are driven using ideas, and then those different type of domain-specific languages are not compatible to edit. And if you edit the code, then the graphical interface will not work. The code will not render in the low-code platform. So it is one way, and sometimes developers find this really difficult because developers like to edit the code as well as they like to use the graphical interface. And another major issue is most of these low-code platforms have their own life cycle of the application. It doesn't support the generic principles a software developer would like to use around version controlling, and then whether you can use testing and debugging tools that the developer likes to use. Those things are not supported in most of these platforms. Then the integration is limited to the integration capabilities provided by the platform. I think Bill explained about the importance of APIs. When you create APIs, you need to integrate many endpoints. So having a great integration capability is a must in any low-code platform. Then the last point I have listed here is about the vendor lock-in. Most of these low-code platforms create some proprietary code and then use a specific runtime to run. Because of that, the developer will be not able to take that generated code outside that platform and then do modifications and run in their own platform, like a container or any other platform that they are planning to use. So these are the key problems that we see that is blocking pro developers to use low code, and why the developers are not drawing code rather than they stick to one side of the story at a given time. So how you can make low code work? I think if you look at it, if you strike out all these problems, it will provide a solution. Actually, it's not easy like that. So we looked at in detail how we can overcome this situation. So basically, first thing is democratization of the development. As I explained earlier, we need to connect all these three developer groups, the citizen developers, ad hoc developers, and pro-code developers, and provide the seamless user experience that we can address all three groups. And then this one-way traffic, we have to make it bidirectional. To do that, you need to have a proper graphical and textual parity in the platform, that once you edit the code, it has to update the graphic. Once you update the graphic, it has to change the code. Then the the software development life cycles related problems should address by providing a proper developer zone. Developers like to write the code, test it, and then commit, and they will kind of go through that particular developer cycle. And that is the fun of development. So we have to support many capabilities in that developer zone. So the low code developers as well as pro code developers should be able to use the same code base, and they should be able to share the code and do pair programming. All these beautiful activities that we do in day-to-day coding should support in the same platform as well. And then it has to have inbuilt tools that provides a great extent to do the debugging and testing, as well as it should be able to extend that particular capability to use the tools that particular developer is using, because developers are really productive when they can use the tools that they used to use, so they like to use. Then the integration should support a great ecosystem, as well as, as a platform, it might have limitations. So there should be proper extensibility for the developers to build connectors or any other, introduce new protocols, new security standards into the platform and use it. And for the last point, the vendor locking, how you can avoid it, use open standards as much as possible. Once you use open standards, then even the code can take outside the platform and use it without an issue. So those are the some areas that we can look at how we can overcome this situation. So let's step back and check what exactly these developers are building. So that what they are building is an experience, and they are building these digital products, because we are in an era of all these organizations required some kind of digital experience as their unique offering for the consumers, because any user today, regardless of the service that they receive, they look for a digital experience. So most of the developers doing today is building this particular digital products, taking feedback and keep on improving that. So they are doing another task at the moment. So there's a cloud movement, and we call it as the cloud native engineering. So it is two-fold thing. First step is you have to move to a cloud. In a typical exercise, you will start with on-premise, move to hybrid, and then go completely into cloud. But that is not enough. You have to modernize your applications as well. If you don't modernize your applications, then the moving to the cloud will not provide a benefit for you, as well as it will cost a lot, because you are running something not prepared or designed for the cloud. So organizations require to do these two exercises at the same time. So because of this cloud native nature, and I didn't talk about microservices and microservice architecture, both are heavily involved in this development. So this is a complex problem. Now, addition to this low code, pro code problem, you get complexity at the planning level, then technology selection, because if you go to the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, you will see various cloud native technologies are available. So picking these stuff as well as finding people to work on this project is an issue, as well as retaining them is an issue as well. So I call this problem as the messy middle. that most of the organizations are in this messy middle. As a result, it takes a lot of time to deliver value out of the strategies that you build. So when we are finding solutions, we have to look at the holistic view, because finding a solution for part of the problem will not help this organization. So that's where this concept of a platform coming into the picture. So as a technical lead or a manager who's working on these products, what you have to look at to increase the productivity by reducing the complexity. Even as an individual developer, I think this is what each and every developer require, that frictionless flow inside the organization that will increase the productivity. So that way you can keep on releasing these applications and contribute to this digital project without any blocker. So I talk about this messy middle, and organizations are looking for a solution. I think the best way is to provide a platform that will connect all these pieces. A platform is a supportive structure that increases the effectiveness of a community. I think there are many definitions for the platform, and this is the best definition I found from Dave Gray, who wrote this book about the connected company. So once you have a platform, all these different groups can connect, as well as you can provide some governance and try to reduce the complexity as much as possible. So organizations are looking for these type of platforms, and all these capabilities that I explained in as solutions for to bridge the low code and pro code. If you can address those problems inside the platform, you will have a proper platform that you can use for innovation. At the same time, you can connect these two groups without an issue. So that is how I see a solution for this problem, and as a contribution, as a result, that you will get this type of an output. What will happen if you have a platform that you will connect all these systems, that I call it as a network of systems, and then you expose the capabilities as APIs, and top of that you will build all these digital products. In that development, as well as in the API creation that you see in the bottom layer, that you will be heavily using low code and pro code, and you can bring the entire organization into this exercise, because now the low code and pro code is connected. So you can bring citizen developers from business groups, and you can have ad hoc developers who will be doing development as their part-time thing, and then the pro developers who's full-time working on these code bases. And then what will happen with the digital products, you will create an experience, a great digital experience for your end users, and start contributing to the value stream. That way, the technical tasks, the architectures, the code that we write will have a direct contribution to your organization, because you are feeding into the overall value stream in this setup. So is this resonate with you? Because I think you might be in different stages of digital transformation. I believe every organization is looking at this, and then pandemic kind of accelerate this need of transforming into digital, and then creating APIs. But then again, depending on your situation, you have to apply these concepts. So as a contribution to this exercise, what we have done as an organization, we have introduced a language called Ballerina, as well as we have built a platform called Choreo, and I invite you to take a look. And if you need more information and have a productive discussion with me, these are my details, and you can add me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, as well as read my blog. And we can have a productive discussion, and I'm happy to help you in any area that you want to get or need more help.
Awesome. Thank you, Asanka. Yeah, and to their credit, you know, we've reviewed Ballerina on the Nordic APIs blog, and it seems like a powerful language. And, you know, supporting Choreo, which I checked out myself, and has some awesome capabilities for low-code development. Yeah, I love all the points you're making about, the problems with low code development and everything that needs to change to really like get pro code on board with this trend. Yeah, a lot of that resonates with what I'm viewing in the industry. But before we dig into kind of more talking, I'd like to get Dawie's kind of take on everything here. So yeah, let's bring up those slides. Let's see what you've got to say.
Great, thank you, Bill. I'm Dawie. I'm head of customer success at 2057. Now, we're a software development house, and we've got two low-code products called Links and Stadium. And one of our primary focuses is to integrate systems. Now, we've been empowering DevOps with enterprise-grade low-code tools now for over 20 years. And through these years, we've learned more and more about what we really needed to do a job. And in 2016, we've launched Links to the public and allowing them as well to then start to build and consume APIs. Now, as a developer and a low-code user, one of my favorite questions people ask me is, can you? So can you build this? Can you connect to that? Can you integrate with this? And through these questions, we've been building up a very nice stack of GitHub examples of, yes, through low-code, you can connect to these systems and integrate products, etc., etc. So please, whenever you do see me, just ask me, can you? So today, I want to have a quick talk about low-code, microservices, REST APIs, SOAP APIs, and how all of this comes together. In the last 20 years or so, APIs have become a huge part of any system. When we talk about APIs, it can be just about anything. However, no two APIs are alike, and everyone is using their own standards, their own formats. The same with microservices. So what brings this all together at the end? And it's your end goal. What do you want to accomplish? That's what brings all of this together. Now I'm going to take you through a quick example of how two completely different systems can talk to each other using low-code, and also some common pitfalls of working with low-code. So, but first, what is low-code? So for us, low-code is the ability to build complete, complex, and usable solutions without having to write code. Now, this is a bit different than no code, as in with low code, you are still using programming principles and logic. You've still got your ifs and your whiles, your SQL, JSON, XML, strings, integers, all of that. At the end of the day, you are still coding, albeit by dragging and dropping. It's just much quicker. It's easier to learn than a programming language, and it's also much easier to maintain. Have you ever tried to find an issue in someone else's code? Well, that's hard. Next up, what are microservices? Now, I see them as simple data providers or single actions, which have a singular and specific role to provide a piece of data, which you can then consume into your own system. They are normally modular, can live independently. A couple of examples of microservices would be currency converters, postal code finders, etc. The whole idea is you've got an internal fountain of data and you need to allow other people to, or other systems to consume it. So in essence, low code and microservices seem to be a match made in heaven, except there's a couple of pitfalls. To demonstrate this, let's jump straight into an example. It's a real world case study of something we've actually done. For background info, we've got a customer. They are quite a large shop, so we'll just call them the shop. They're a large retail shop with multiple sites, multiple buildings and products. And as their core business system, they are using Sage X3. And they've got all the bells and whistles in there. Now, the shop approached us quite a while ago with a question, can you? Well, there it is. I love that question. can you pull invoices from our Sage X3 system and place it into our CRM system, which is Salesforce? So that got me all excited. I had to prove I can. Sage X3, yeah, it's a complex system with a lot of different REST and SOAP connectors all over the place, and most of it's custom built. It's got different standards and structures. The fields are weirdly named. And as a bonus, most of the documentation is French, which I really don't understand. But within a couple of days, we've developed without any code a solution showing them, yes, we can pull data from Sage X3. And since then, they've been using our tool for integration into the Sage X3 system, Salesforce, and the Shopify store. During that process, we've built a couple of reusable low-code functions which understand Sage X3 and can pull and push data through the REST and SOAP endpoints. So recently, the shop had a new request. For record keeping and regulatory requirements, they need to store all of their supplier and customer documentation off-site. And that's all the paper-based and electronic documents. So every delivery note, printed invoice, all of that. They identified a filing partner who fits their requirements perfectly. Just one small hitch. They need to reconcile the paper documents to their sales and receipts data. And all of this sits on the Sage X3 system. But the shop system speaks one language and the filing partner speaks a completely different language. And the systems can't talk to each other. To change in either of these systems would be a considerable cost. And neither of them have the appetite for a large customization project on their own systems. So that's where low-code comes in. And also, here's the first pitfall. Because we've previously worked with them, they think, and rightly so, that low-code just automatically does what it should and everything works. So their request was, we need to send invoices to SharePoint. Nice, I thought. Okay, I jumped off. I started planning SharePoint libraries, SharePoint integrations, but that's not what they needed. As with normal coding, when you want to build something, you need to be clear of what your requirements is. What we were asked to quote on and build was not at all what they needed. I know. Low code promises the world. So when I talk about requirements and specifications, it really sounds counter-revolutionary. It sounds like programming. So yes, the pitfall is this. Even though low code is easy, fast, and quick, do not skimp on the requirements, because if you quickly build something completely wrong, it's still wrong. So long story short, we sat down with the shop and we spec'd out a requirements document. After discussions, we came up with these requirements. The shop needs to provide the data to the filing partner in a specific format and language which the filing partner will understand and can use. The data must be available on demand and immediately. The partner will pull the data based on a date. And then finally, the shop systems are inside of a private network, but the filing partner is from outside, so it needs to still access the service from outside. So it took a couple of days to get these requirements finalized, but finally, the fun can start. With a clear requirement, we can then set up and complete the solution for the shop. And this is really then where low code comes in and simply bedazzles everybody. Yes, low code is easy to implement, especially since you understand what the correct requirements are. Because we've previously worked on the shop systems and already have reusable functions talking with Sage, we can simply call them again with different parameters and interpretations. So let's jump into an example. I'm going to use our tool called Links, which is an integration and automation tool. The example will be for a microservice that returns customer invoices as for a requested day. At the end, we will deploy the solution to a link server and pull some example data from Sage X3. Okay. Right. So to build, I'm going to start with the end in mind. First, we'll set up the response for our microservice. So we already know what the requirements are. So we'll create a new type, which we'll use as the response. We'll call this customer invoice. And then first things first, we need to set up the structure for this type. For each invoice, they are looking for the customer's company, the name, the email, invoice number, and date, but also quite a few other fields as well. So for this filing partner, this data structure is critical. At the end of the day, they also need to send the archived documents to each of the customers, and they can't send the wrong documents to the wrong customer. So all of these fields are critical for the filing partner. Okay. Once this is done, we can just save that. Okay, once this response has been set up, we can now add the service to our project. I'm going to use what we call a simple REST host. And that's just because that's what it really is. It's really simple to use. And it's perfect for microservices. We'll call our service filing API and give it a URI. And then we need to set up our operation. We'll call this operation a customer invoice. And we also need to just set up what path we'll call this. Will also be customer invoice. And this will be a GET service because we only want to retrieve data. There will be one parameter called date. And then the response will be a list, and we'll use our customer invoice that we just defined as well. So we will return a list of customer invoices. Okay, that's it. So microservice is now ready to be populated with data. What we'll also do is we'll just enable documentation so we can send that to the filing partner. Okay. Right, so to get the data into our API, we'll use our Sage X3 function that we've already defined called getCustomerInfo. If you look at it, you can see that we've got some fields in there. We've got class and representation and count. So these are all Sage X3 objects. We're not going to worry about them now. We've also got a page count because we need to loop through the invoices in batches. The reason for it is on a goods day, the shop will have over 1,000 invoices. So we split it up in batches and we keep calling it until we get to the last invoice for the day. Okay. So once this function is set up, we can then run it and we can get information back from Sage. And I'm going to show you an example of how this data will look. Okay, so here you can see this is the type of data that Sage sends us. So it's not very pretty and not understandable at all, but everything is in there. We just need to get it out. And remember, there can be over 1,000 of these on a good day. Okay. So let's get back to our microservice. We can just call our Sage X3 function and give it a date. And we know that Sage X3 will return a list of invoices back. So we can just easily loop through the invoices. So we get a for each, and we use the invoice list from our Sage X3 function. Now to map these invoices to our own response, we use an add to list function. And the list is going to be the response for our microservice. So we just go to our results, and the response is the list that we want to add it to. And then we can simply map the fields we want to use. Okay, so we'll just map each of these fields. To map these fields is going to take a while, but by assigning the correct ugly looking value from Sage X3 to our nice, easy, readable structure, the filing partner will be able to use them. So each time we're just going to select the correct Sage X3 fields and map it. Now, just to make this example easier, I'm not going to filter through the invoices, but essentially we could run checks against any of these fields that Sage X3 returns, and we can decide whether the invoice should be returned or completely ignored. Again, assigning the correct field is critical for the business to make sure that we don't send the incorrect invoice to the incorrect customer. Okay. Last field, and that's it. Now we can test our new microservice to see how the data looks. We need to click debug, and we provide it with a date. Okay, and then by stepping through the function, we'll receive some data. And we can see, yes, we're getting the data, and the data is in the correct format. So sorry, my head is in the way, but we'll do a test just now. So let's push the deploy button, and we're putting our microservice on the link server. Normally the server sits in the cloud. It's got VPN access to the Sage server and an API exposed to the outside. So once this deployment is over, we can go to the server and we can just switch on our microservice. Cool. Okay, and then we can test it. So let's go to our test. Okay, right. So as you can see, I'm running a test to my microservice, and all of the fields are there. All the fields are nicely formatted, list in all of the correct formats, and yeah, you can actually read it. Sorry, I had to blur the fields there because those are real data from the customer. And now we can let the shop and the filing partner know that that they can start using the microservice. Now, how would they know how to use it? And that's the nice thing. It automatically publishes an API reference document, and the filing partner can just use this and connect to the service. And also they can download the open API JSON file and import it into their own system if they want to use it that way. Okay. So this whole process took only, what, 10 minutes? So of course, we already had the Sage X3 function, and I've got a lot of experience using this tool, but the value for the customer was realized immediately. The real life solution from start to end took a couple of hours to build and put live. And that brings us to the next low-code pitfall. How much can you really charge a customer for 2 hours of work, which normally would have taken weeks of coding, integration testing, going live, etc.? Well, I really don't know, and I'm asking how much. I don't have an answer for this just yet. So our final thoughts on low-code and microservices. Yes, they are a good match. In this day and age, content is a really valuable asset. By using low-code and APIs and microservices, you can convert your asset into true value for your company. Low-code and microservices architectures both aim to improve agility in software development. Understanding the customer, their requirements, and their environment, that is where the value lies. That is where the traditional developer's experience, mindset, and skill comes to effect. That is what a customer pays for at the end. So to reiterate, don't skimp on the requirements, and for yourself determine what you can charge for a customer for the work. Even though it only took a couple of hours, it's your skills and expertise that they are paying for. Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you, Dawie. Yeah, really interesting overview of some of the common hangups of maintaining one of these sort of platforms, and awesome proof of concept for generating a microservice from scratch within just a 10-minute time frame. That's cool. What do you think would be required to get something like that production ready? Because is there anything else you would be needing to consider?
Well, if I look at the example I just did,
yeah,
compared to the real world project that went into production, the only difference is where we added a bit of authorization, so not anybody can call it. And that was pretty much that. I think we did 2 microservices for the customer in 2 hours, and we just put it live. So it was production ready, and the user could have used it immediately and start getting value out of it.
Yep. Authentication, though, that's something that is very important for any sort of development scenario. So what do you think is the low-code platform's role in like governing access and kind of maintaining control over this whole new development paradigm? And maybe Dawie, you could start.
Okay. Yes. Well, at the end of the day, the low-code tool that you use must allow you to protect your work. I mean, to protect the customer's data, whether it's through what's it, OAuth, or through bearer tokens or API keys, anything like that. The tool must enable you to do that, and obviously do it easily. It can become extremely complicated, so you don't want to make it that difficult for the user. If the tool is set up, one of the examples that we've built is a complete OAuth to environment, which does all the token generation, refresh, etc., etc. So if the tool allows you to do that and it's up to the standard, then the user can just use it without having to worry about it.
Right. And Asanka, how are you guys handling that?
Yeah, I think the security is a core component, right? Like API integration and security, those are the two technology pillars that you need to have when you are building any solution. So even we have focused heavily on the security side. So there's like inbuilt security coming from the system level into application level. And then we are in the process of extending the security capabilities by merging CIAM, or Customer Identity and Access Management solution with the low-code platform, so that way that application developers can leverage some of these capabilities. And I think it's a really good thing, because if you look at the current organizational architecture, the security operates in a silo, and it is a center of excellence team. Even the companies are moving with agility. So bringing this security, standardizing it for the organization and embedded it with the low-code platforms will help the developers to build solutions that will compatible with the security standards. Otherwise, what will happen, that developers will build the applications, and when you try to push into production, then security team will say, okay, this is not compatible. So I think it's a key element. That's why we are also trying to democratize the security part to the development as well.
Yeah, it seems like access control, identity management, that could be like its own microservice that's utilized within these platforms if it's produced correctly. That's something we'll be covering at our next LiveCast. Actually, I'm excited to dig into. But yeah, I like how both of you kind of explained the power of integration and the need for extensibility. It seems like a lot of these low-code platforms do have a lot of proprietary code, and they're just not allowing pro code the ability to go under the hood enough. So I guess that's my question. How important is it to like go under the hood with the low-code platforms? Asanka,
so I can jump in, Dave, if it's okay. We are coming from open source roots. So everything we do is open source. And the architecture of these products done by having a number of extension points. The platform will provide some set of connectors, but it provide enough interfaces for the developers to build these connectors, because integration is really important, that we will not find API ready endpoints in every organization, because we are dealing with these legacy systems, legacy data, and we can't just avoid it and build a greenfield system overnight. So we still have to deal with these things. And within the organization, we might have some flexibility, but what about the partner network? Because we can't do business as a silo, right? We have to connect with the partner network, and it is limited that we can change the stuff on the partner side. So we need this integration to have a successful API program, and this extensibility is important, because otherwise you will get stuck and you will not be able to connect all these systems seamlessly.
Yeah. Do you think it's viable though, like letting non-professional developers like create integrations? Is that something that these platforms are enabling, or is that kind of more on the ad hoc side of the low code platform maintainer to produce these integrations that then they work within the platform?
So I think that's where this bridging will come in handy, because in some integration you might need help from a pro code developer, because some of this integration might be complicated, and in some cases you might have to do some security bridging. So I think the combination will work, like letting it to handle by a certain group might be an issue, but some integration, like Salesforce to Google, that type of integrations a citizen developer or ad hoc developer can easily do, but some you might need pro developer guidance heavily.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd like to talk about that handoff a little more, but Dawie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, just two comments. So firstly, sitting through Asanka's presentation, I was actually so glad that he's confirming what we were experiencing as well in the market. When we originally started marketing our tool, we were focusing on, non-developers, people fresh into the game, not with no previous experience, and we found that it's actually not the correct target market for our tools. We basically switched gears and started marketing directly to developers, people with experience with coding, and we find that they pick it up so much quicker, they understand it better, and they implement it much better. So that's the first thing. The second thing was, sorry, what was the second question you asked, Asanka?
About how, like, non-professional developers, do you foresee them actually like making integrations and making that from scratch? Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So having said that, we've changed our target markets during the time that we were pushing our products towards the non-developers. We actually did find that there are people out there that they make complete businesses using a low-code tool. They've got no programming experiences. They're accountants or marketing managers, but they would take a low-code tool and they will build a complete business around it. So it's not, you can never discount either of the two. I mean, you can have professional coders and you can have your non-coders, and they're both valuable markets for low-code.
No, absolutely. And I feel like people have an innate ability to learn anything if they have the time and resources to do so. So I guess that kind of segues into my next question, because sure, you're replacing the need to code with a visual interface, but the visual interface has a language of its own, and all these platforms are unique. All the UIs are unique. You really need to know where to go, what to click. It seems like having great support materials, walkthroughs, and documentation is just as crucial for low-code platforms as it is for, making an ad hoc RESTful API integration and following their like open API spec generated documentation. So I guess, are you guys coming into any hurdles when you're trying to onboard, non-developers into low-code, and how are you solving that?
Yes. Okay, let me jump into that one.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Definitely, like you're saying, the documentation is critical. We found that when you're looking at your non-developers, they would expect that every single possibility would be documented somewhere, which obviously with a development tool, that's impossible because you can develop pretty much anything. So on the other hand, our more experienced developers, they used to pretty good documentation. I mean, you've got Visual Studio with its documentation at Microsoft, you've got Eclipse. So they used to having good documentation available to solve an issue. So if you want to go into that market, you need to provide the same as well. What we found is, and what we've been busy with for quite a while now is, the more examples you can provide, the better. So show them how to do something, either if it's in a video or if it's a GitHub example that they can download and do themselves. The more examples they can use, the better.
I would like to add a little bit there, Bill, because you brought the language nature here. So motivation for us to even introduce a new language called Ballerina is mainly because of this, because we identify the existing language, the languages, they don't have proper support for both sides, the graphical side and the textual side. So Ballerina is designed for that. And that's how we can have this parity of graphical and textual, and can address both ad hoc and citizen ad hoc and professional developers. And I think having an open language also helpful, because if the language is proprietary, then the user will lock into that particular vendor, right? In the approach that we took, you can just write Ballerina code, bring it to the low-code platform, or you can start using from the low-code platform, create these code snippets, and then move to your own editor as well. So all these things that developers like to do is supporting, and that's why that we did both as a introduction to the industry.
Yeah, that's right. I think you both mentioned, the importance of enabling developers with the tools that they're comfortable with, like enabling those kind of day-to-day operations, and it has to have some synergy with these new platforms. But you also want to support some sort of handoff, I assume, between like pro devs and non-devs if they are working together in the same organization. So how do you guys see that handoff functioning in organizations that you've witnessed or worked with? I'm curious.
Should I jump in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So I think that handoff happens in many ways. Even for a pro-code developer, there are boring tasks in development, right? Personally, I don't like to deal much with the data side of the story. I hate doing this manual data mapping. So if there's a tool to do that, then I am productive. Pro-code developers can use tools to do certain things like that. And then again, like if the code and the graphical thing are kind of working at the simultaneously, then they can do pair programming, right? The citizen developer can create a prototype and then take it to the pro-code developer, or citizen developer can start working on this and then get the pro-code developers help. So the problem in the current organization is these two silos, and those are not connected and not a single code base. And I think in a way we are building these shadow IT applications in most of the low-code platforms, because even those code is not committed to the code base. Those are handled in a separate isolated environment. So those are the problems that I see, and that is not that is why there's no a proper synergy in between these two groups.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, the same thing. What we've been experiencing is there's so many different ways that you could connect the two. I mean, obviously an API is in an ideal world, you would always have an API contract that the two can connect to. The coder can code to it, and then also the low coder can connect to it. But there are plenty of other ways. One of the examples is at some of our clients, we've got a little, we call it a C# plugin in the low-code tool. So you can actually put your code into the low-code tool, and it will run it from there as well. So the programmer can do their programming inside the tool as well. So yeah, it will always depend on what's the specific environment and the requirements are.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. All these tools are really promoting creativity. So it's like that can be adopted in numerous ways, I would assume. We got a question in asking, are these platforms anyhow supporting API first or API design first in parentheses? And I think this could be interpreted in a couple ways, right? Does the platform itself, is that built around API first kind of development strategies, or also the applications that are generated with the platform, are those designed to be API first too? So how are both of your platforms approaching this, and what do you think is the ideal way here? Dawie, yeah, I guess you could start.
Okay. Yeah, from our side, I mean, again, it's going to depend on what you want to do. But definitely, if you want to start on the API, you can do import your definition and you can go for it. You can build your whole system around that. And then again, other way around, you can build your whole system and then only get the API in and just make your connections. So it all depends at the end of the day what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. But definitely, I personally have found that if the API is available, that's the direction to go.
Yeah. Seems like specification first design is also helpful there too, right? Like utilizing the latest open API spec.
Yes, no, definitely.
Yeah, Asanka, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so actually we are supporting both, like the entire platform developed on top of APIs that we call them as a system APIs. And from the application developer point of view, again, it's a API first approach that we support various API specifications like Open API spec, GraphQL, async APIs, all these specs are supported. And there's a wizard that you can start creating the API and then get into the microservices. So how much we kind of embedded into the API, even we are debating these days whether we should call them microservice as a API creation too, because end of the day, what you are doing, exposing an API. So you will have API proxies, and then you will have API composites, and then you have like API implementations that you write these different type of business logic and expose it. And then you can have a way to categorize them as edge APIs, domain APIs, and utility APIs. So that way you will know what's the purpose, whether it's an internal and external API, and then have these different protocols at the top as well. So that way same logic can expose in many ways as a request response or event driven or streaming API to the application developer. So I think the whole purpose of the API design is how much we can make the application developers' life easy. So if we can do that, then they will quickly build these applications and deliver the experience to the end users, right? So that's the motivation and answer. If I reiterate, yes, it's a completely API first approach in the platform implementation and the user point of view as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, people won't be surprised to hear that I'm like an advocate of both of those kind of approaches. I think in addition to improving the whole user experience, it seems like a way to retain value, right? Because whatever you're generating from these systems, ideally it should be like reusable. And it seems like APIs are a nice way to confirm that going forward. Kind of looking to the future, where do you guys see low-code platforms progressing? There's so many new styles of development, new languages. I mean, just in the API economy alone, Asanka mentioned some of the new progressions going on with like streaming and event-driven services. So yeah, I guess where do you see low-code platforms heading in the near future? Maybe Dawie, you can start this one off.
Yeah, in the industries that we've been working in, what we're finding is that, you know, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, you had IT, which was programmers, and you had business. And what we're finding is low code is going to create kind of another sphere in that whole environment where you've got your hardcore development programmers, and then completely separate from that, you'll have more integrators or implementers that will, you know, drive the business requirements. They will drive the business implementations. So definitely going forward, I just see low code getting more and more entrenched into businesses and in the industry as a whole.
What kind of term do you like for these sort of folks? I've seen so many different things used, you know, citizen developers, knowledge workers, business units. How do you typically describe them?
I love the word integrator because that's what they're doing. But
Integrator, yeah.
I think every company has got a different name. You've got engineers, you've got implementers, you've got, yeah. So yeah. I just love the word integrator because it talks about what these guys are doing.
Cool. Yeah, Asanka, any thoughts on the future of
Yeah.
what's the best name for this third group?
Yeah, so I call them as domain experts because
Okay,
end of the day, you have to provide some capability, right, to the end users. So they will do this integration stuff. And I think the first question you asked about where the low code will move and what's the future, I think it's going to be a critical component, because I'll continue from what Dawie said, because now every company is a software company. Everyone is a developer, some kind of a developer, right, regardless of the profession that they do. And then again, that is one side of story. So we have to use low-code platforms to bring development to different groups. And the second problem, we know that there are a lack of developers, that we don't produce enough developers to the demand. So having low-code and making existing developers productive is another key thing. So I think it's helping in both ways. And if we can find the solutions for these problems, it's going to be mainstream. And as long as we can make the developers happy and then keep them in that developer zone and make them productive, I think it's going to be a key component in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think this could be going more mainstream with the proper productivity in place, like you mentioned. Before we call it for the event today, we did get one more question in from Susan Mixon. Susan is asking, how is the API security handled if these integrations are to be exposed externally? Are they deployable in an API gateway? Asanka, maybe you want to start this one off?
Yeah. So I think that's a correct pattern, that you call it as the API facade, that you create the integration and then expose the capability as an API, and categorizing it as internal and external API will help you to have more security. And in the deployment side, it will be a separate pool of API gateways that's handling the external APIs, and then you can manage certificates and the API keys properly, and have a proper workflow even to handle the subscription of the external APIs and tighten the security at that edge.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Dawie, how are you guys handling it?
Right. Yeah. So from our tools point of view, so I can't speak about all tools, but
right.
in our sense, we do allow the implementer or the user to select what kind of security they want to use, whether it's an API key or bearer token or OAuth, or can't remember all of them now, but you basically select from a drop down what do you want to use, and then depending on that, the user or the consumer of the API needs to provide the correct authentication keys, etc. And then talking about the API gateways, so yes, definitely, when you've created or built your API, then you can also run it through a gateway. For instance, on our cloud service, we are using, I think, the Kong gateway, which obviously it helps us with load balancing, etc., etc. So right. Yes, yeah, you can set it, you can put it behind the gateway to be managed.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like that's pretty paramount for security right now. Of course, there's so much more regarding security, and sometimes gateways are inefficient to spot, bad actors that are authenticated. I think that's for a different LiveCast though. Okay, Asanka, Daniel's putting you on the spot here. Is a new language like Ballerina really needed? I bet you get this kind of question.
So my answer is yes, because one reason is what I explained about the graphical and textual parity from the low code side. Okay, that is one. Number two, if you look at what's really happening in the industry now, the middleware is kind of moving into code and infrastructure. Like if you look at a system like Kubernetes, it provides a lot of middleware capabilities, and then you need this middleware capabilities within the language to have a proper microservices based design, and then to use containers optimally. Otherwise, you will end up with this old passion of using shared library concept. And if you look at one microservices, you will end up with 10 to 15 sidecars around that microservice. Then you are going back to the same problem, and you will not utilize these capabilities. That is where it's important to have a language that contains all these middleware capabilities. As example, in Ballerina, the data types are XML, JSON, and we have table format to represent data instead of having these typical data types in a language. So it is kind of built to handle those middleware capabilities, and that's why it will be really important for a developer who is working on these distributed systems and planning to utilize microservices and cloud native architecture styles.
It also, you were saying it supports that bidirectional capability pretty well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's one approach. I haven't seen all low-code platforms adopting it, but that's interesting. Let's see. Lal is asking, how do we solve connection issues to legacy apps? Do we have to buy connectors or adapters? Asanka, you want to have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in our platform, the connectors are coming with the platform itself, and then you can contribute these connectors as well. I know it's kind of a business in like one decade before, because the people used to sell connectors. But then again, we are in this ecosystem of different businesses, right? You can't sell connectors anymore, and every platform provide an API. So it's basically have simplified that API and providing connectivity. So that is how we handle it in our platform.
I like your point. You know, the days of buying connectors, it seems antiquated. I mean, if the API is a product though, and it's selling the data, it's selling the functionality, I think that's different. But if we're just connecting like business processing applications that you already have free access to, you know, through a subscription or through like a free capability, then it doesn't seem like that's really being charged as much these days.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because to access the X system, you already have a subscription, right? So you have paid
exactly.
to that particular SaaS provider. So why you should pay more? Exactly.
Yeah. Like what you see on the web interface should be accessible by an API anyways, in my opinion. Dawie, any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. The connectors and the plugins, they're already part of the solution, so they're in the system. And also, I mean, it's going to depend on how legacy are we talking about. For instance, one of our solutions are connecting to a DB2 database, so it's all already part of the system. If the legacy app allows some kind of data outputs, then you should be able to connect to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It depends on how legacy we're going, because something custom might need to be constructed if we're going like mainframe and whatnot.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I think we've gone a little over time. We've covered a lot of ground in this event. Really appreciate you contending with all these questions. Yeah, great discussion. I think this is a fascinating place to be in, a good space to be in, and we'll be following the low-code platform trends through the blog and other resources. So yeah, thanks so much. I'm just gonna present some sign-off slides real quick here. All right, so yeah, thank you so much to our speakers, and thanks to everyone who tuned in for the great Q&A. I'm just going to sign off with a few updates from Nordic APIs. First off, we recently put out a new ebook. Check out API as a product if you're interested in forming a kind of a product around your microservice or API, some good advice on monetization and business strategy here. You can check it out for free at nordicapis.com/ebooks, along with all of our other free ebook resources. And I always like to say, you know, our blog is open for submissions from those writing, you know, within the API community. If you would like to be featured on the blog, please visit that URL and we can work with you. We do maintain a newsletter featuring updates every other week from our writing team. We're covering a lot of different areas when it comes to APIs and low code and authentication and strategy. So you can sign up on the website to always have a little bit of a little dash of that knowledge in your inbox. And we're looking forward to more live casts. We're just kind of keeping it digital right now with events. And if you would like to be featured as a speaker, please submit a talk by all means. We have an ongoing call for speakers up there. Something I didn't add to slides on this is that we just are about to announce our Best Public API 2021 competition. So stay tuned for updates on that. That's our yearly event where we try to crown the best public API out there. And we have a great panel of judges who are going to be adjudicating this year. So that's great. Really excited to announce that. And of course, as always, thanks to our sponsor, Curity. You can learn about their OAuth server and identity-driven API security solutions at curity.io. So yeah, that's all, everybody. Thank you so much for a great event. See you next time.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Dave.